you're uncomfortable, like a lot of us are, it's time to talk.
The luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
Freedom and equality. To remind America of the fierce urgency of now.
If you're uncomfortable, like a lot of us are, it's time to talk.
The luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
Freedom and equality.
Let's talk mental health, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things they don't see. Let's talk about mental health. Let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's time to talk.
Hi, welcome to Awareness Talks. We're your hosts, Jack and Allie McGuire, founders of Awareness Ties. Thank you so much for being here.
We're really glad that you're joining us. Awareness Talks is where we get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We do three things. We identify and demystify stigmas surrounding social causes. We get personal with stories. And we explore ways to move forward. Tonight, our subject of discussion is mental health. We start the evening with a pre-show to set the tone for our conversation ahead with music, poetry, and stories.
Now, when it comes to mental health, there are many who, like Isabella says, try to put up a good fight, but struggle in the dark at night. Isabella Blake Thomas wrote the song Blinded and performs it for us now. Hear just her and her piano in this exclusive performance. Isabella.
Every single day I do my best to stay on my way, but I'm blinded, blinded by the light. Oh, I'm trying to put up a good fight, but I'm struggling in the dark tonight. I try to tell you it all, but it's not easy, makes me feel small. I feel like I'm being crushed, and I don't know who I can trust. I try my best every single day. I do my best to stay on my way, but I'm blinded by the light. Oh, I'm trying
Thank you, Isabella. That was beautiful. Not only is she a singer, but she is also an actress, having just released her most recent film, playing the role of Princess January in Disney's The Secret Society of Second-Born Royals. In addition, she also serves as Awareness Ties official ambassador for suicide awareness.
You know, so often, so many of us get tired. Tired of the struggles, tired of the pain, and what do? I'll tell you what Brianna Walker did. She expressed her frustrations in song. This 13-year-old from Compton wrote an original piece that she performed as an anthem of her own with a very strong call to action. Listen to this.
We must rise up. We must control this. We must end suicide and bullying. Your father seated you. Your mama tried to get rid of you. Your mama hates you. Your father disclaimed you. Your self-esteem is low, so you act so cold. Thinking it's cool to target the weak right there at your school. We must rise up. We must control this. We must end suicide and bullying. We must rise up. We must control this. We must end suicide and take a stand. Show them love, give them hugs, help understand. Bullying must come to an end. Yeah, love and unity is what we need because kids are dying by bullying. Let's come together as one race. Take a stand, put better place. I'm a survivor. I got more life to live.
Super powerful.
Absolutely.
You know, from Isabella on the piano to Brianni on the stage, we now shift gears and hear from Joel with a video posted to Instagram. It takes so much courage to share how you feel. It takes hope to believe that you can heal.
In Joel's words, he says, "It's a song about feeling like you're drowning, but when there's someone to hold on to, things get more manageable." With courage, he sings and shares the song, City.
There's a harvest each Saturday night where the bars fill up with perfume, hitching a ride. A place you could stand for one night and get gone. But it's clear this conversation ain't doing a thing, 'cause these boys only listen to me when I sing, and I don't feel like singing tonight all the same songs. Here in these deep city lights, girl, I could get lost tonight. And I'm finding every reason to be gone. There's nothing here to hold on to. Could I hold on to you?
Thank you so much for sharing, Joel.
You know, so far we've heard three very different voices. Each expresses the importance of acknowledging feelings and intentions. Earlier, with one voice, it was Brianni, stating, "We must rise up." Now, with many voices, we have Time to Rise. This is written and performed by Aura and Rebecca Fitch, and featuring Northbourne Park School Choir. It's produced by O.M. McGarry, and video is created by James Hastings.
Here it is now, the anthem just unveiled for the Phoenix Rising Collective.
Under skies older than the sands of time. I wonder, can you hear my cry for sure? Over time, there has been a misaligned symmetry of pure design. Oh, Father, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. Feel it changing energy as we rise from the ashes, bringing peace and compassion, waking the love inside, liberating the masses. We restore the imbalance, breaking free from the silence, waking the love inside. Our desire to see the people harmonize, thousand generation choir, all singing. Time to rise. Can you see the phoenix fly, transcending our divergent tides? Oh, winning. Time to rise, time to rise, time to rise. Oh, we shine. Time to rise, time to rise, time to rise. Oh, we shine. Time to rise, time to rise, time to rise. Oh, we shine. Feel the change in energy as we rise from the ashes, bringing peace and compassion, waking the love inside, liberating the masses. We restore the imbalance, breaking free from the silence, waking the love inside. Freedom, unity of people, power and unity, strong and free. We live and breathe this love will be our reason, no longer defeated, strong and free. Time to rise, time to rise, time to rise. Oh, we fly. Time to rise, time to rise, time to rise. Oh, we fly.
What an inspiring performance. You know, there are songs that you can actually feel, and I could feel that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You know, each of the songs we've heard makes a statement. Statements are made in other ways as well. Poetry, for example.
So, this next piece, it's one that I wrote while being very honest with myself, about myself. Sometimes the person it's the hardest to be honest with is yourself. As hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide. As hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide. As hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide from the truth. No amount of gin and vermouth can conceal what I feel. Time to deal with what's real. Time to heal. Because as hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide. It's eating me up inside. From within I sin against me daily. Truths denied or justified as pride maintains, despite these refrains of as hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide. Sooner or later you find the traitor you sought to find within your own mind, who knew it was you, who did you wrong all along. Truth I spied as now I confide. As hard as I've tried, I can no longer hide.
Allie, thank you so much for sharing your words.
Mm-hmm.
So, music, poetry, there are many ways yet to cope with mental health issues. Books, art, books about art.
Right. So, what we're going to share with you next is a conversation. It's a skit that leads into a book, where coloring inside and outside the lines is not an option, but a requirement.
Your Therapist is Anxious, too, is a workbook written by Dr. Jen Martin and illustrated by Kristen Martin, where you can beautifully battle anxiety with artistry. Mm-hmm. Take it away, girls.
Hi, welcome. How are you feeling?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing all right. Well, I mean, the planet is literally burning alive, and I know I'm not doing enough, but other than that, I'm doing pretty well. Like, recycling and metal straws aren't cutting it. The rainforest is literally being destroyed, and I've only managed to plant 2,787 trees. Taking 30-second showers, but I know I should get it down to 15. I went vegan, and I love cheese. I ride a bike 67 miles to and from work every day. Okay, well, last week I did drive in once, and I haven't slept since. I'm the president of the neighborhood park cleanup committee. I chained my naked body to the front of a nuclear power plant. It's not enough. Renewable energy. Carbon emissions.
Well,
greenhouse gas.
Oh, okay. Let's just take a deep breath.
Okay. Oh, sweet oxygen, I don't deserve you.
Okay, I think I might have something that could help here.
Hi everyone, I am Kristen Martin.
And hi, I'm Jenny Martin, and we are sisters, and we are creators of the book, Your Therapist is Anxious Too.
There are so many things that trigger anxiety, and what you just saw was just an example of one. Never feeling like we're doing enough, never feeling like we are enough.
That's right, and I see it all the time now. Being a psychologist, especially in today's world, so many of us suffer from the same things, but we feel so alone. And I think we become more siloed into our phones, and we are so competitive and so comparative that it's really hard to remember that these things are very natural human concerns. So we want to bring light to that.
So about a year ago, I was suffering from my own anxiety, and I printed out a picture of my face, and I started literally painting my brain and what I was feeling in my mind, because it was just feeling like absolute chaos, like I couldn't get it under control. And after doing that, I actually felt better. I had released a lot of the tension that I was feeling inside. I didn't share this with anyone, but I did show it to my sister because she's a psychologist, and I was like, oh boy, am I okay? She actually thought it was a really cool exercise that we should try and use, which leads us to the book.
So that's right, this book was totally inspired by that one piece, Kristen's drawing of the brain. I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh, so many people would resonate with that. Talk therapy is one way to get to our struggles and to our worries and concerns, but there are so many other creative mediums that help us understand what we're going through. And I think one of the main parts of anxiety that can be so difficult for us to manage is the sense of being so overwhelmed that we don't know where to start. It becomes so snowballed into something that's bigger than ourselves that breaking it down becomes almost impossible. So I saw this piece of art and I thought, why don't we create something that gives some structure and allows people to engage with their anxiety in a fun, creative way, but also helps provide education about managing it better in the future.
So this isn't just for artists, this isn't just for anxious types, this is for anyone who wants to push themselves outside of their comfort zone. You will need markers, colored pencils, crayons, paints, whatever to do some of the projects.
Sometimes art unlocks things within us that maybe we're not conscious of. And we think that the combination between the education and the visual artistic pull offers a really unique way to engage with your own experiences. And every chapter comes with its own particular art. So if there's a piece that really speaks to you or symbolizes the mission that you're working on personally, those are available for purchase too.
In creating this book, something that was really important to my sister and I was to donate some of the proceeds towards suicide awareness.
Suicide awareness is something that we are both very passionate about, and it's touched me on a very personal level, which is part of why I wrote this book in the first place. On the professional side of things, we are seeing an incredible rise in both attempts and completed suicide rates. This is something that is a major problem, and often it's addressed far too late. So in creating this project, we want to bring awareness to the steps that can be taken before it ever gets to that point, and managing anxiety and mental wellness is essential to that. We hope that the proceeds that we can donate will be part of the fight for overall health and wellness.
Also, if you purchase one of our books, inside the book, we have a discount code for the artwork that you can purchase on our website, www.youranxious.therapist.com.
It was very important for us to preserve the integrity of this project, down to the paper, down to the sides, everything. We wanted to really keep the integrity whole. So we rely almost entirely on word of mouth. If you believe in this project, if you loved it, if you support it, please, the best thing you can do is tell people, share, tag us on Instagram, just spread the word. And you can follow us on Instagram at Your Therapist is Anxious Too.
Yeah. And thank you so much to everyone who have already been supporting us. It means the world to us.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, Jenny and Kristen. That skit was seriously hilarious. And the book, both brilliant and beautiful.
You know what else is beautiful?
What?
People sharing personal stories and making statements.
Yes.
Inviting others to have the courage to do the same.
Absolutely. And here are a few examples that we'd like to share.
It is important that we are kind and we listen to people we come in contact with, because we truly don't know what they're going through, mentally, emotionally, or physically. I have lost people to suicide. I love you, Hunter. And me and my friends struggle daily with stress and anxiety. It's time to talk.
We are in a time in our society where mental health is one of the most pressing issues ever, and suicide rates are on the rise. We must talk about suicide, acknowledge it, know the risks, the factors, and engage with one another, but we must be creative in the ways that we do that. In 2020, we have written a narrative of drastic change that has affected all of us, and this sudden change needs to be talked about and how we feel and all those factors that entail. People are struggling, and it's time that we talk about it. It's time to talk.
This pandemic has affected our lives in unprecedented ways. For way too many people, it's been burying their loved ones. For others, it's been fighting in intensive care units for themselves. Others still adjusting to how they can work, whether they still have a job, whether their kids are sent to school or attempting to homeschool, whether they choose a grocery store that they feel safe in or order home delivery, whether they travel, whether it's safe to see family members. All of these things have led to increased isolation, increased stress, anxiety, depression. For many, it's caused mistrust and has led to increased anger and frustration, unclear views about what to do with the information they get, whether it's from the media, pharma, or even their doctor. For people in the medical fields and people on the front lines, there's been moral injury from dealing with the consequences of being on both sides of the pandemic. The one good thing has been that there's been a shift in how we talk about mental health, lowering the stigma, recognizing that it's just as important as our physical health, and we need to talk about it. So, let's talk.
No one has to live in silence because of bullying. No one has to hurt or be alone, and certainly no one has to die. Bullying isolates, it degrades, weakens, and silences us. It erodes at our confidence and self-worth. It deprives us of the basic need of belonging to a community and to a tribe. I know, I was bullied as a youth. Although it wasn't physical, the emotional impact left a scar and changed me forever. Growing up, I always felt like an imposter, like I couldn't be who I was. And during high school, the pressures of fitting in were powerfully crippling. I never quite felt like I was enough for anyone. I simply didn't belong. You see, there was a group of popular boys, the in crowd, who made me the target of their malice and scorn for no apparent reason other than that I got along really well with the girls. That's why they teased me and called me Lance Romance. They made me feel like I wasn't good enough for them, like I wasn't enough of anything. I wasn't masculine enough. I wasn't like them enough. I wasn't rich enough. And I never truly felt like I was enough for anyone. Certainly, I wasn't happy enough either. It hurt so much that I felt worthless, that life was worthless and wasn't worth living. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I tried to take my life away. But I was lucky. I'm still here. But even to this very day, I still feel a sense of shame and guilt speaking about suicide. Shame because we are made to feel helpless and weak. We're judged for trying to hurt ourselves, but really it's the bullies who try to hurt us. and guilty because the bullies will never know what they did or how they changed my life forever. Since then, I got on pretty well with my life and I did okay. I'm married, I have children, and I'm a very resilient person. But I was lucky. You see, I finally have the courage to remove my masks, to speak up, because bullying robs us of our courage to rise. It prevents us from taking flight and discovering the freedom to evolve into the best version of ourselves, to truly be ourselves. Removing the mask is empowering, and it comes with responsibility to speak up for others, to break the stigma, and to encourage victims of bullying to reclaim their courage and to remove their masks, because no one has to live in fear, no one has to live alone in pain, and certainly no one has to die because they are the victim of bullying. That is why I share my story, so that others can have the courage to speak up, to remove their masks, and to become better and stronger, and to feel like they belong. Let's raise our collective awareness so that together we can make the difference. We can save lives. We can create safe spaces where everyone can thrive and belong. No one has to die in order to belong.
Thank you so much for sharing your words. And thank you everyone for tuning in to the pre-show. You know, words, poem, music, these are all ways to show and share support for mental health.
Absolutely. And another way is with a symbol. So the screen awareness tie you see here, it is a symbol of support for mental health awareness. It's available on our website. It's a way to raise awareness and to start needed conversations.
If you or anyone you know is dealing with a mental health crisis, there is help. Please see the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number below.
Before our conversation with our panelists begins, we would like to introduce you to Ned. We recently met Ned Stranger, a musician, a writer, and now a columnist for Aware Now magazine with his monthly feature, Music with Meaning. Exclusively for Awareness Ties, Ned recorded a special performance of his original song, Vancouver Waves.
Enjoy. It's absolutely beautiful.
Hello everybody, my name is Ned Stranger and this is Simon, who I'm looking after at the moment. So the song I want to play for you tonight is a song I wrote a few years ago called Vancouver Waves, and it's basically about the need to kind of run away from the world for a little bit when something really tragic happens, and kind of reassuring yourself that when you come back, the world's still going to be there. Sort of about escapism and that need to sort of like, you know, look after yourself for a bit when something awful happens. I don't know why the idea of Vancouver sort of crept into my mind, but it was sort of thinking about somewhere right at the edge of the world. And I don't know, like the imagery of the waves and being on an island cut off from everything sort of fitted in beautifully with Vancouver being on the edge of the maps that I look at anyway. So that's where the name of the song comes from and what it's about. I'm going to play a little bit of it for you now. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Cool. You are the calmest wave that I've ever known. You are the calmest wave. When you stop coming into shore, nobody knows, but I'll be on my way. My mood moves like the tide, a storm that builds inside of me. And if you ever vanish off the map, nobody knows, but I'll be on my way. Hibernate till I'm on form again. The world can wait wait another year. Hibernate till I'm okay again. The tidal waves can't follow me here. So I came here to the island. I braved the stormy seas. The air is clean and it's silent, far from such tragedies. The sun sets better than a painting. It calms my eyes with ease, and it's the saddest sky that I've ever seen. Oh, another year. Hibernate till I'm okay again. The tidal waves can't follow me here. You are the calmest wave that I've ever known. You are the calmest wave. Vanished off the map. Nobody knows, but I was on my way. Thank you so much for listening. Now it's time to talk.
If you're uncomfortable, like a lot of us are, it's time to talk.
The luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
Freedom and equality.
Hello, and welcome to Awareness Talks. I'm Jack.
And I'm
Allie.
Allie.
We're founders of Awareness Ties. Awareness Ties is a platform for raising awareness. We also have a monthly magazine called Aware Now, which spotlights stories and causes that need to be told. In fact, Awareness Talks was taken directly out of those pages of the magazine. And it's a cause that we dive into deeper each month. The talks consist of 3 amazing panelists each month, and we set out to do 3 distinct things.
That is right. So awareness talks were created to start the needed conversations to create sustainable change. And with an unfiltered format, we do 3 things. First, we define and demystify a stigma about a social cause. 2, we share personal stories. And 3, we explore how to raise awareness through action. So this evening, it's time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in a discussion about mental health and suicide prevention. So joining us as our featured panelists, we have Isabella Blake-Thomas, Johnny Boucher, and Dr. Jenny Martin. So introductions here, Isabella Blake-Thomas. She and her mother, Elizabeth, were actually among the first to join the Awareness Ties family. Isabella is our official ambassador for suicide awareness. So since the day we met her in LA at a film festival, we've been in love with her light. Isabella is a singer and actress, having just released her most recent film starring as Princess January in Disney's The Secret Society of Second-Born Royals. She's also the founder of Mother and Daughter Entertainment. So, Isabella.
Welcome, Isabella.
Welcome to
Thank you for having me.
Johnny Boucher. So, interestingly enough, we were introduced to Sip of Hope coffee by Isabella and Elizabeth. with
True story.
with a recommendation to check out this coffee shop in Chicago that donates 100% of proceeds to mental health education. We said, well, this is something. Let's check this out. We came to find out that the owner was the one and only Johnny Boucher, who is also the founder of Hope for the Day, a nonprofit focused on suicide prevention and mental health education. So in love with his mission, with him as a person, and his coffee. It's really freaking good. We featured Johnny in the Life edition of Where Now magazine. Interestingly enough, the universe connecting. On the cover was Isabella. So strange how things just happen. So now in the next edition of Where Now magazine, the stand-up edition, that's where Dr. Jenny Martin comes in. Her debut column, Dear Dr. Jenny, happened with that issue. So Dr. Jenny Martin is a licensed clinical psychologist in Chicago with her private practice, Gemstone Wellness, that specializes in working with adolescents and adults touched by depression, anxiety, trauma, loss, issues relating to race, sexuality, gender expression. In addition to being a psychologist, Jenny is also an author now, recently writing her first book, Your Therapist is Anxious Too. It's beautifully illustrated by her sister, Kristen Martin. So Jenny and Kristen were recently welcomed as our official ambassadors for mental health awareness. We have three amazing panelists.
Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Absolutely. We're really, really happy to have you here. So tonight we are honored to have your voices present, along with that of Lisa Bowman. So she is the founder of Marketing Mojo, former CMO of United Way, and current advisor for Awareness Ties.
Yay.
As our moderator for the evening, she's going to be navigating us through these conversations. She's a very special member of our Awareness Ties family, and she's going to guide us tonight. We're going to do three things.
The three things are define the stigma, share our stories, where we get very, very real very quickly, explain a solution for not just talking the talk, but walking the walk.
That's right. So we are super stoked to have this conversation, and we've said enough. So Lisa, take it from here.
Thanks, Jack and Allie. You guys know you've been rebranded, so I have to share this. So collectively, you are now Allie Jack to me. So I am so happy to be here again for our second awareness talks, and to our panelists, thank you. I'm so excited to hear the conversation tonight, because clearly we're living in turbulent times, right? We've got all of this stuff happening around us. We've got the political drama that continues to unfold on a daily and sometimes an hourly basis here. We've got social unrest, we've got economic uncertainty, and then really the umbrella over all of this is the ever-present issue that we're dealing with of COVID. We're all being impacted, right? Each of us is in a different geography. That's the beauty of being able to get together over digital, but all of us are facing this in the communities where we are. And COVID is responsible for a lot of the anxiety that's happening right now. I saw some surveys from the Mayo Clinic talking about the fact that there's been increases in the number of adults that are reporting symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. Right now, during this pandemic, as compared to pre-pandemic, suicide figures are up an amazing and horrifying 200% since lockdown. And experts are worried a lot about the impact of social distancing on the mental health of children and teenagers. Nearly a third of teens in a survey that I saw reported that they were unhappy or depressed in recent months. And yet we still have all of this stigma around mental health and anxiety and depression. But almost everybody either is dealing with it or has dealt with it at one time or another, right? Sometimes it's an issue, and sometimes it's transactional. Even President-elect Joe Biden has shared the fact that he endured some mental health struggles that took him to the brink of suicide following the death of his first wife and his daughter, and he's been very open about that. And I mean, for me, I'll be the first to admit, right here, right now on this broadcast in front of a global audience, that I've had my days recently where I've been struggling. I've had anxiety, maybe depression, I'm not quite sure, but definitely anxiety, and days where, you just kind of wonder, when is this going to end, and how do I pull myself out of this? So I'd like to kind of start with finding out if everybody else is feeling the same. And Jack and Ellie, let me ask you guys to tee it up and then toss it to somebody else. But is everybody else feeling this way, or is it just me?
Yeah, no, I don't think you are alone in this boat. We are all there.
Yeah, it's
a complete 180, that no one asked for or gave consent to,
In fact, I think once this is all over, you can throw the statistics that were prior to COVID right out the window. I bet they just shoot up from here.
Mm-hmm. It's something that, Jack and I, having a family and like all of these things, it's, everyone's dealing it, whether you're single or married or family, we're all dealing with it. The thing that's comforting that I think Jack and I have found, trying to find the silver lining here, is that we're not alone. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big problems, that so many people feel so alone. But when you step back and you can say, I'm not the only one dealing with this, I think that's where we've found comfort. Isabella, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've all been through the ups and downs that COVID has brought, and being in lockdown, and some of us going to second lockdown again. I think there's been some highs. There's been time to kind of reboot and start again and finish up things we wanted to finish, and it's given us some time to regroup as a race and give the planet time to heal. But there's been so many lows, and the lows have been so low for everyone that it's almost balanced itself out with the great highs and the really, really low lows. I can say for myself that at the beginning of COVID, I definitely felt exceptionally lonely. I'm a very, very social person. And so to not be able to hug people or to go out and have dinner with my friends, especially now that I'm at the age that I just drive myself places, I really, really missed it and really, really needed it. It was very, very, very challenging. I'm lucky that I had some fantastic people in my social bubble that I was able to go to and to spend some time with, because if I didn't have that, it would have been a lot harder than it was for me.
Mm-hmm. Jenny?
I'm an empath and a highly sensitive person, so there have been some perks to this whole situation for me. It's just reduced the stimulus input for me in large ways. Just being home, having my routine, there are parts to it that have been actually surprisingly nice to fall into in terms of a routine, but it has been really difficult to be a therapist right now. Typically when you have a caseload, you're dealing with different concerns. You get to go into different worlds. You interact and you offer something because you're not in it too. But right now, every single session, every single patient, I'm feeling a bit of what they're feeling. I wish the greatest thing I feel like I could do for so many of my patients would be to put them in a room together, because they're feeling so isolated, and I can't do that for so many reasons. But yes, I feel the impact of that. And I feel like at the end of each day, I am this sponge that has absorbed and taken on so much suffering, and the little sufferings. Not everyone has gone through a profound loss, or loss of a job or a human being, but these little tiny things, like being able to throw a baby shower, being able to have your wedding, these moments that just accrue into the snowball that feel like the punctuation marks that make life joyful. It snowballs. So I'm feeling a lot of that myself right now. The loss of the things that make the season feel magical, the family feel connected. And I know my patients are feeling that as well too. So this has been a painful year in many ways, despite the fact that I've learned I really like being home.
Right. It feels like the little things are so heavy. The things that didn't bother us before weigh so heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're all kind of mourning the loss of just those moments that we took for granted every day. And Johnny, before we get to you, I mean, Jack, to your point about that, the simplest things that we never thought about for 2 seconds, meeting a friend at Starbucks for a cup of coffee. Those are the things that I'm craving right now. It's a really simple act. but just craving that ability to have that social interaction with somebody or be able to see my family for Thanksgiving, which I'm not going to be able to do. I said to my dad that I was willing and going to give up this Thanksgiving in the hopes that it would allow us to have all of the future ones. And that's a tough decision for us all to be making right now. Johnny, you want to bring us home on this?
Yeah, I feel like me personally, I've always been quite resilient, and because, after being diagnosed with PTSD in 2018, I really got a hold of what my tools were. So I feel like I've, in a sense, I've been more privileged to have those tools be ready for these moments. And also going into this, I was traveling a lot. And so I was starting to absorb it. And when I got home in Chicago, it's really when it really hit when we shut down our coffee shop. But it also put me, weirdly enough, in this like survivalist mode, because not only am I, in charge of Hope for the Day staff and now the coffee shop staff too, I'm in charge of I got to take care of myself. So it became, I really leaned into the we versus me mentality more than ever. But in order to do that, I really had to check myself to say, like, how are you doing, bud? And there were hard days, anyone who says it was easy peasy is full of shit. Let's just be honest. Yeah. So I think that I think that we also need to give some grace to the fact that, COVID really allowed us to have the conversations that had been necessary for quite some time. And it's allowed us to advance, but as we were saying, those who were struggling before COVID are having a rough go at it, and amazing individuals like Jenny who are taking on larger caseloads than ever. Even if you get to do it through telehealth and wear your comfy sweatshirt, it's still a lot because you're healing, or you're hearing a lot of people's pain. And within COVID too, there's a lot of solutions that have been put on hold as well. So it's to really wrap it up for me, it's been empowering because I've been able to stay put in one place, which is not really how I've ran the organization for the last 7 years, as we grew internationally, but it's allowed us to really hone in what's important for us at the organization, take on a massive caseload. Our education numbers are through the roof, but also lean in to make sure that us as individuals are taking care of ourselves so we can take care of others, which is why I have a Peloton right there and I ride it every single day.
Nicely done.
Very nicely done. No, the comforting thing for me is like, good. I was beginning to think it was me, and I'm glad to know that we're all in this together. Right. And so what we've just talked about is that we're in this together because of this situation that we're in. But aside from this situation, I'd like to ask each of you to get a little personal with me, because remember, we only get comfortable by being uncomfortable. And so I'd love to ask you each to share a personal situation or a time, some incident that really caused you to struggle mentally with your own mental health. Johnny, I think I'm going to kind of go in reverse order here because I know you've dealt with this a lot. So I'd love to ask you to start, and then you can pick the next speaker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The biggest point in time for me was struggling was prior to getting diagnosed with PTSD, because I started off 2018 on a rough foot. January 3rd, I had gotten out of my car that was parked parallel to my apartment in the Albany Park neighborhood. And I took 2 steps after getting out of the car and almost caught a stray bullet in a massive shootout that erupted. And I've been always conscious of Chicago crime and whatnot. And us as an organization, we really pride ourselves on going into neighborhoods that a lot of other organizations may not go into, just because, that neighborhood has this, that, the other, what have you. But I wasn't expecting it. And after I had my own sort of like action movie experience, I ran into my house and I just was like, oh my gosh, like what's this going to be like? How is this really going to impact it? And because I'm a man and I'm stubborn, I shoved it down and I just went business as usual. And we talk about at Hope Today mental health being a soda bottle, and my soda bottle was shaking up every single day, and I wasn't telling anybody until the point that I was having struggles leave the house, and I just could not get to a place where I felt comfortable, maneuvering things. And I didn't want to buy a gun. I didn't want to do any of these things. But that ultimately allowed me to say, hey, you know how to ask for help. Stop being stubborn. Stop allowing stigma to speak for yourself, and lean into it. And after I did, I always say, like, this weight came off my shoulders because there was clarity. But then I knew I needed to further dive deep into that process to make sure I'm good, because I run this organization. But, all that aside, I'm a human being, and there's tools out there that we pass every single day in our communities and we overlook. And it's because of things like stigma that caused me to further, spiral and struggle when I could have, maybe gotten to it a little earlier. But the moment I did, I opened a lot of doors for myself, as well as friends and family who were like, holy shit, you? And I'm like, yeah, I'm the guy that says it's okay not to be okay. My therapist also called me out on it too. And I was like, you're right. So, that was that, but it was the first time that I truly struggled, where I felt like I was held back in a way that I had never experienced ever in my life. And sure, I've had my bad days and my good days, but I'm also like the biggest spokesman for boys needing to cry. I mean, it's fucking awesome. We all should cry. So I feel that over the years I've gotten through that, but that was definitely the biggest struggle of my life. And I'm happy to say that I'm a work in progress, and every day is, in the right direction, but it took a lot of time and energy to get there.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, Isabella, you're from your perspective, which we talk about it at Hope Today, that, I can't speak for anybody who walks in any other shoes other than my own, but I would love to hear, from you, because, a different point of view, but also a different age demographic going through a lot of things, in similar times, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough one, because I'll just start out by saying this. Being an actress, my life is on show all the time. And so I am as honest as I can be on my social media, because that's how people know me. But obviously there's certain things that I don't share, because it's not other people's problem. It's not for them to deal with. It's not their information for them to know. So it's important to have these talks now, because I can also show to people who are watching that it's like, hey, you see this version of me on social media, and sure, it's me, but it's me the 99% of the time. You miss the 1% of the time where I'm struggling and I'm going through stuff. The two things that actually came to mind for me, and they're for different reasons because of the different ages I was. One of them was my parents divorcing. That was very, very difficult for me, because I felt I lost control of everything. And I was trying to grab onto anything I could to kind of stay in control, whether it was organizing my bedroom, which God, I did that like once a week. It was like, let's put my bed here, let's do this, let's change this, let's paint this. And my mum noticed it, and so she let me be, because it was the only thing I had control of. Because at the age I didn't really have full kind of control of my schedule. I wasn't really in control of how I got to places. I just kind of went along with life. And so the thing that I had control of, which was my family and my unit, kind of disappeared. And so that was a really big moment for me. And there was definitely a lot of struggle that only recently I've actually kind of finally let go of things and finally been able to move on. But the most recent thing was actually 2 years ago in 2018, I had a best friend who was 100 years old. And she was my best friend in the entire world. And she was my neighbor. And I spent upwards, I'd say, of probably about 6 hours a day with her every single day. And the days I couldn't, I was like, and it drove me crazy, because we just got on so well. And she got me. And she passed away in 2018. And that hit me really hard, because she had been someone I had gone to for everything, and any situation I needed help with, she was there for me. And after that, I actually went into a very, very dark place, because I was just, I had these two conflicting views of, I felt so alone and I knew what I was going through, but I also felt like what I was feeling wasn't as bad as everyone else and what everyone else experiences. And I think we've probably all had that at some point in our life, whether it's to do with mental health or just something else, is that you feel either your problem isn't as bad as someone else's, or you feel that, I don't know, for me, it's attention seeking. And those are things that I have learned now, that that was not what I was going through, and what I was experiencing was being depressed. And it's weird saying it, because having depression and being depressed are two separate things. And so many people don't understand that. And it's like, it's okay to be depressed and then be able to come out of it. It doesn't mean that you have depression. And so it's a big thing for me to say, because there's so many ups and downs in life, and we all go through it, and you go, oh, well, I'm not depressed. And it's like, actually, you can be depressed and come out of it. It doesn't have to be a lifelong thing. And so I was very, very down. And the way I explained it to people is I was just very, very sad. And I felt numb all the time. And so that's kind of the explanation I use to people, is like, when you're going through that, everything you feel is valid. Because I had my mum, but I didn't have that person, because she had been the one that had passed away, to tell me that what I was feeling was valid and what I was going through was okay. And so many people experience it. And I know that now, and that's why I try and share this information with people, because if I can share my experience with people and that'll help them go through a situation, great. If I can help one person listening to this, fantastic, because things like this, we all go through loss. I've lost so many people to suicide, and we all experience it. And I hate that I'm having to become, quote unquote, used to it, because it's happened so frequently. But we all have to learn ways of coping with the difficult things, because life isn't all fairies and butterflies and rainbows and unicorns. It's just not. And so if we can all find those ways that in our own way helps us not just push things under the carpet, because that's not healthy, but to go through things and work through them and still experience them, because those experiences and those journeys and those emotions just make us stronger people in the future.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Jenny? What is your opinion on this as a professional?
I relate, to both of you. I think I want to, I could certainly share events that impacted me to an extreme point. One of them was the suicide of one of my dearest friends a week before his 21st birthday. And that was a big part. He is a big part of my storyline and why I'm here in the first place in terms of becoming a psychologist. It was a pivotal thing, but I want to take the opportunity to answer this from the perspective of dismantling stigma within a seeking therapy perspective, because oftentimes I still hear, it's actually really common to hear, but wait, if you are a therapist, you should have, you shouldn't be sad. You should have it together, right? And that's so not true. That's not true. And so I want to really express candidly how not true that can be. There's this idea that as psychologists, we have figured it out. No, the hope is we have really gotten in touch with our humanity to the point that we are so comfortable with the mess that we find that we can sit in it and share in that with you without falling apart. And that is just a beautiful place to get to. But to get to that point, I had so many bumps along the way. And it took me a really long time to understand what was happening for me. So for those of you out there who might identify as neurodivergent or gifted or HSP or, quite introverted, I'm in your camp. I'm one of you. So life is hard. Consciousness is hard for me. I feel things on levels that are so deep and so profound. It's like layers upon layers at any given moment. When I hug someone, I can feel their energy of what they went through that day. And it's a real burden, but it's my gift. And I have to learn how to protect that and use it wisely and with boundary. And learning how to do that has been the greatest journey of my life. But along the way, it wouldn't even necessarily be a specific trigger, like, oh, this happened. And so then I felt really bad. I've had the kind of life where, I remember probably the first time that I felt truly suicidal, where I really felt it deeply. I was a teenager, 17. And since then, there have been 3 major times where that has been a real feeling. And I've seen it. I've seen that darkness and how it just wants to pull you in. And I have felt it. And there was one time that I was really, really close. And I think now that I'm on the other side, I've had to confront my own internal biases. So here I am, this doctorate in psychology, who still refuse to really take it seriously and look at, okay, how do you get on top of this? So it was an internal battle to get to a point where I finally accepted the help I needed to say, okay, you know what? I need medication. I was preaching this all the time to people, to patients. But for myself, I thought I needed to be stronger, which is such a misnomer. So I've had to really dismantle all my own stigma bias internally. And it's actually become one of the best tools I have when working with people, to be able to show you can see the darkest side of life. And I'm living proof you can survive it. You can come back. And there is hope and there is beauty. And yes, there will be more suffering. And you might even see that darkness again, but then there will be hope. And I think that's how I live.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Jack, Allie, anything you guys want to contribute or share, an incident maybe, or something?
Well, Jen, to your point, as far as a therapist, it seems like any therapist I've known, they've typically gone into it to help themselves, to fix themselves. And then, they either want to help other people or help themselves. And that's so powerful. Do you want to share anything?
I think, and so as we're sitting here having this conversation and I'm seeing the shirt that you were wearing, Johnny, it's okay not to be okay. It's certainly a very powerful statement, a powerful anthem, a powerful belief when you can convince yourself that is the case and actually believe it and walk that. Don't just talk it. It's actually, I think I just had a epiphany right this second, kind of getting goosebumps about it. A lot of times, I used to write a lot of poetry. And I remember writing this one piece where I would say, it's okay. And words I say and thoughts I convey, I tell myself every day that it's okay. And that was the refrain of it. And it would talk about, I do this, I do that, I do that, I do that. But at the end of the day, I talk myself into saying, it's okay. When I know
or you sing it.
Or sing it.
She's always singing.
When I know.
Yeah, she should.
That maybe it's not. And as opposed to the statement that you profess and that you share and that you, that it is okay to not be okay. And I think the misstep that I had personally, that I'm just now seeing actually in this conversation, is that for the longest time, I have been thinking I was saying that, but I really wasn't. Say, oh, it's okay. I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
But not. So that's powerful. So yeah.
I think I'm actually going to take away from this, candidly, from me, that it's okay to not be okay, because Johnny, to your point, I'm pretty resilient too. And, I've been dealing with some stuff lately, and I've had my days where I'm less than okay. I just need to give myself a break now and then and just go, you know what? It's okay. I'm allowed to not be okay. And that's reality, right? So Jenny, you brought up the word stigma. And I want to dive into that just a little bit, because there is stigma around mental health, and why? Why should there be? Because in my mind, that just causes more stress and anxiety for somebody who's dealing with it. And just even by the very definition of the word stigma, which is a mark of disgrace around a particular circumstance, right? We're dealing with this. And so it can be uncomfortable being honest with all the biases we carry. And we've talked a lot lately, at least in the last awareness talks that we did, we focused a lot on implicit biases, but it was more about race. But we carry them about mental health too. And I'd love to kind of have some fun with this if we can, by challenging ourselves to a little game, like playing word association, where I mention a word and then you tell me the first 3 things that come to mind. So Isabella, because you're the youngest, we're going to start the game with you. No pressure at all. So first word that I'm going to toss out there is depression, and like lightning fast. 1, 2, 3. What are the first 3 words that come to mind?
Sadness, struggling, and stigma.
Sadness, struggling, and stigma. The 3 S's. Yeah. Thank you. We all have bad days, but like to your point about being depressed or having depression, right? And them being 2 different things. I don't know how to tell the difference sometimes, right? How do you tell if it's transactional or if it's transactional but seems to be lasting, if it's becoming a permanent state of being that needs to be addressed? And so I would say that sounds like a perfect question for our clinical psychologist, Jenny. So can you give us kind of the textbook response to that and then the real everyday response about how do we know if we're just having a bad day or if we truly are depressed? What's the differentiation between those 2?
Well, it's a really long kind of answer for the clinical side of this, but I'll try to break it down and then describe the everyday response. So if you're looking at clinical depression, it has to hit so many different markers or criteria to be really diagnosable. And the one thing to remember is it's not yours to diagnose. So you don't have to even put that pressure on you. It's not yours to ever try to figure out. So I'll offer this, but don't feel like you have to know this. This is not to be done unless it's with your doctor. So there are 8 criteria for clinical depression. They range from symptoms such as, hopelessness, sadness, thoughts of death, changes in weight, appetite, sleep, motivation. And you have to have at least 5 of those symptoms present for at least 2 weeks in the same 2-week period. And one of those symptoms has to either be sadness, real low mood, or what we call anhedonia, which is the loss of interest in things you used to enjoy. And those things have to go on for two weeks at least, and they have to cause you impairment in some sort of way. So either socially, occupationally, with school, all of that has to exist. And then there is a diagnosis of depression that can come with that. And then there are many specifiers. It can be moderate, mild. There can be so many different things with anxiety, with mixed symptoms. But really, I think what we need to know generally is just, if you're asking the question, there's probably reason to go seek support. If you're wondering, this feels just a little different than what my life has looked like so far, ask the question, reach out, see what somebody else has to say. We are not great. None of us are at assessing ourselves always. We need a little bit of help bouncing that off. So the best thing you can do is just see. And if nothing else, especially with therapy, you certainly don't need to be clinically depressed or clinically anything to get something valuable from it. Insight, self-growth that happens regardless of your diagnosis. But the one thing I would also add to that, when you asked, Lisa, what do you look for? I like to think about sadness and depression like sadness. It's sort of like clouds in the sky. They come in, they're dark, but then they move away. And I think depression feels more like a big black sky. The sky's not changing. It's just there, pervasive. If you feel like that, it's time to reach.
I was going to say it's a really good analogy and one that I've actually used personally when I went through a situation about 10 years ago. And the way I described it to somebody is that I felt like there was this humongous storm raging around me. And so I kind of crawled into a hole to protect myself from it and deal with it. And all of a sudden I realized that the lightning and thunder had stopped and the rain was slowing down to a drizzle, and kind of peeked my head out, and I saw that there were patches of blue sky peeking through the clouds, and realized that it was like okay to come out again. And that was sort of how I described the process of coming through this situation that I'd been dealing with. So it's really gratifying to know that somebody who's actually licensed to deal with this describes it in very much the same way. So thank you for that. And, you know, if people are struggling too, the one thing I want to call attention to is if you think you might need help, if you're not sure, there's never any harm in contacting or connecting with somebody to see that. And so we do have scrolling on the bottom of the screen a number that you can call if you or someone you know is struggling right now. And I would encourage people to take advantage of that because there is help available. And so really the first thing to do is to assess whether or not you truly need help with that. Okay, next word that we are going to play. And Johnny, you're up. You brought up PTSD. So, you know, a lot of times people associate PTSD with war and veterans, and maybe it's top of mind for me because Veterans Day was last week. So I don't know, but sometimes war has absolutely nothing to do with PTSD. So Johnny, I'd love for you kind of word association. When you hear that word, what are the first three things that you visualize or that come to mind when somebody says PTSD?
Well, traditionally, you nailed it, you know, veteran, you know, somebody like we think veteran, military, war, but I'll throw a fourth one on there that's not even a word, it's just me. And the reality of all that is that, you know, the stigmas that we've been taught are that people who only serve for, you know, in our military are the ones that can be impacted and suffer from that. But I think we're all on this call and we can all agree that that's bullshit. And I can also say that because obviously I got, as I said earlier, I got diagnosed with PTSD, and I've spoken on military bases. I had the pleasure of being with, you know, FBI agents this morning, but like, again, I'm not them, you know? And I think that one of the most discouraging things that I faced personally was thinking that, oh no, I don't have it. Like a vet may have it. So like, I basically cut myself down, where the more that we talk about mental health, the more we realize we're not alone, and we do that through experience. And ironically, years ago, when I first started getting into the more educational side of mental health, and taking great courses like mental health first aid, which now I'm an instructor of, but the more I dove into it, the more I just kept thinking there's got to be people living in the southwest sides, west side of Chicago, who are all living with PTSD that aren't part of our military. They're part of our community, though, and they're the ones that are, you know, stricken with gun violence and gangs and drug sales and all these horrible traumatizing things that, you know, you got to ask, you know, how do they feel? And I think that because we are still, from a society standpoint, buying into the only people who are, you know, experiencing PTSD are vets, because you see billboards around Chicago that say, you know, that has a picture of fighting PTSD, and it's a figure of a military person. We need to dismantle that, because I think that Jenny can, you know, definitely back me up on this, that trauma is you know, so unique and personal. And the more that we put things into these jars and these categories, the more we actually isolate people from the reality that they might be impacted and they don't fit the poster, you know, of what we've been told for so long. But again, that's because we haven't taken the time in society to really address mental health until lately. So we're playing a lot of catch up.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to tee up one more question, and then we had some members of the audience submit questions ahead of time too, for Jenny to just sort of get a quasi-clinical opinion on it. So I want to save a little bit of room to get one or two of those out. But Jenny talked about some of the signs that we can look for, right? That it's this, and let me see if I paid attention here, 8 signs, and at least 5 of them have to be present for 2 weeks. Is I right on that?
Yes. But
hey.
Worry about being that specific.
So Isabella and Johnny, you both had people that you loved and were near you that you've lost to suicide. And so, you guys to some extent are untrained eyes, right? Johnny, you've made this sort of a career and you've progressed towards being in the mental health field. And Isabella, I think you've got really balanced perspective for somebody your age on some of this. So I'd love to know if with those losses that you both had, for both of you with that untrained eye, is there something that you saw or symptoms or signs that caused you to say this person is at risk?
I mean, I can speak from my experience that, the discovery of why I started Hope for the Day was because I realized that out of I've lost 16 people to suicide, and number 9 was my boss, Mike. And I kind of put it all together. And the one thing that I realized between Mike and everyone that I lost prior to him was that no one wanted to talk about it. And that's the reason why I started Hope for the Day, was to simply start the conversation, because I knew that that was one of the biggest factors, common factors between everyone I'd lost. I don't shame them for that. I understand. And I use that as the reason why we, exist as an organization. But that's the one thing that I've seen in all of it, and the lack of communication and the lack of the ability to have those conversations is a very common trait of why we see people, unfortunately, choose to take their life instead of speaking up and possibly finding help. But again, that's just from my experience. Isabella, what's your experience been?
For me, thinking back on it now, in the past 5 years, I've lost 6 or 7 people to suicide. And like I said, I hate that I've had to get to the point where I have to just become used to it. Because if I am not, quote unquote, used to it, it digs very, very deep every time it happens. And it ranges from people aged 16 to late 20s for me. And one of those people was my cousin, actually, last year. And those moments, every time they happen and every time I hear about it, that horrible feeling of, could I have done something? Is there something I could have done to prevent that? And the majority of the time, the answer is no, because what that person is going through is what they're going through. And if they don't want to talk about it, you can't force someone to talk about it. All I can do is I can share this with other people and say, I hope you talk about it. Please talk about it. If you are struggling, talk to someone, talk to your cat, talk to your dog, talk to someone and get the words out, because just hearing things out loud make things so much clearer. And for me, the way I deal with things is I learn things. And me explaining that is, when my best friend died, I went through everything I could, deep dive on the internet. I became like the people you see in Criminal Minds and Law and Order. Like I was digging deep, finding everything I could about her and just learning all this information because it made me feel closer to her. And so when other people have passed away or I've lost people to suicide, I do the research on the mental health, and I learn new things every single time, because the world is learning new things as the world is progressing. I think if I'm sharing this with other people and talking about how to deal with it, I can say it from both sides of things. I can say I've experienced the sadness and that darkness, like you guys said about the dark sky and the storm. I've experienced that, but I've also experienced it from the other side, losing so many people to suicide. And all I can say is talk to someone, because whether you're going through it yourself, whether you have just lost someone, you have to talk to someone, because you can't figure it out on your own. As much as we like to think we are very capable people, which most of us are, it's impossible to go through that kind of thing on your own without talking to someone. And I just want to share that as much as I can. And I ingrain it into people's brains. I'm like, please, please, please just talk to someone. And I say this on my social media. I'm very public about it. I'm like, I don't know all of my followers, but if you need something, please reach out to me. And I talk to multiple of my followers and just help them through things, because I'm not trying to give them advice. I'm not trying to tell them how to deal with the situation, because every single situation is different, and the way we all deal with things is completely different depending on what we've experienced in our lives. But what I can do is I can offer an ear that's completely unbiased and unjudging, and just someone who can listen to you and to make you feel like you're not alone. Because again, it is okay not to be okay. And I know it's very difficult to acknowledge that, but it is okay. It is totally okay. Everyone has experienced at some point in life not being okay. So it's okay. It's natural. It's normal. That's the way life is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. I want to leave, we're almost at time, but I want to try and get in one or two questions that were submitted from people that are viewing this tonight for Dr. Jenny to answer. So I'm going to start with one. I'm hoping we may have time for two. But the first one is from Agata in Poland. And she is asking, besides going to therapy or a specialist, what is it that we can do good for ourselves during a crisis?
Probably something we all wonder sometimes. It's a great question. First of all, if it's truly a crisis, if there's an emergent situation where there's a fear for your life or somebody's life, there's no real action step other than get to a hospital or call 911. That's it. So really keep it simple. If it's a crisis, get help right away. If it's something that is not emergent, not imminent, there are lots of things that you can do. So for one, if you're in a situation where you feel like you need to take care of yourself, you have to know yourself, number one. So that's its own journey. The best thing I think we can do, all of us, is to prepare for the times when things get difficult and do some self-care work now before things get hard so that we know how to take care of ourselves when things go wrong. I would assume we all probably feel this way, that when it gets tough, the first thing that falls off is self-care. The first thing that falls off is taking care of ourselves, the things we work so hard to do. So know what works for you. Know what boundaries you need to set and keep and put into place so that when something does become difficult, you already know what your resources are. Do the work on the front end. And I think that is one of the best things we can do for ourselves. If it's okay, I would also just like to add one other piece just to this as a whole. About this question, but also in general, I don't think we can have a conversation about mental health without addressing race and without addressing the way that historically mental health has been a very racist institution, a sexist institution, a place that is not safe for diversity. And I just want to be a voice that validates that, because there are a lot of reasons that stigma exists. We ask that question, why is there stigma? If you are in a marginalized community, there is reason that there has been stigma. There is reason. We have not been a safe place. So even down to the tests that psychologists use for assessing cognition, cognitive abilities, intellect, they've been normed on white people. They're inherently biased. So I just want to send that kind of caveat too, that as we talk about stigma, a lot of it has to be respected because it has damaged people, large communities. I mean, and not just racially, it's been incredibly sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and we're catching up. We're catching up, but it's slow. So making sure that those considerations are paid attention to, it's essential when trying to get help for someone. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
It's a great point. So important to talk about that.
Yeah, critically important. And candidly, I wish we had another 2 hours, because I'd love you to dig into that just a little bit more. And it ties so much to the panel that we did just a month ago as well. And I think that we're all sort of really working as a community at large to address some of the systemic racism and the bias that we're seeing in our society, because it's out and it's loud. And so it never even occurred to me, candidly, that something as simple as mental health might be impacted by that. I know we're almost at time, and so I think we will get responses to some of the audience questions through another format. But I want to thank our hosts, Jack and Allie. Thank you for your inspiration, for your support of the various causes that you all do through Awareness Ties. It is such a unique thing that you all do, and so vitally important. I want to thank our panel. Thank you for giving of your time tonight. Our publication partner, Issue, our production partner, Connect TV, and to everyone that tuned in and joined us for this evening's conversation. And so before we close, I would just like to remind everybody, if you or someone you know is struggling and possibly suicidal, there is help available. Like Isabella said, talk to somebody. You can call 1-800-273-8255. We all need to stick in this together. and help each other along. So thank you for joining us this evening.
One thing that I would like to mention is, just again from Jack and I to say thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa, for moderating this. Thank you, Isabella, Johnny, Jenny. Thank you for, again, giving of your time. We do want to say when we talk about awareness and raising awareness, that is not the end point, but rather that's where we start. Exactly. So when we look at action we can take on our website, on this Mental Health Talks page, we have a few different actions people can take. You can read an incredible book called Your Therapist is Anxious Too, which is a fabulous way to brilliantly, beautifully explore what is going on. We have a couple of different organizations. We have, so you can read, you can sip. There is fabulous coffee, like I've gone on about, Sip of Hope. So yes, it's a coffee shop, but yes, it's also, there's coffee that you can purchase online. 100% of the proceeds goes to fund the programming that's needed for the education we so desperately need. Beyond that, there is hope for the day. And so, so an organization you can support. So you can support an organization, you can read a book, you can sip some coffee. These are all different ways that you can get involved. There are everyday things that we can do to help other people and on their journeys. And so, again, we can't thank you enough.
We're here for you.
All of you for sharing your personal stories. You are near and dear to us and to our Awareness Ties family. Thank you so much for this. And
please watch Isabella's movie on Disney+.
I'm so stoked to go watch it, actually.
There's a nice twist to it.
There is a nice twist.
I just want to say to you guys, thank you for letting us talk and share these stories, because like I said, I think before we started, if I can help if we can help just at least one person know that they're not alone and that we all experience these things, then we've done our job, and that's fantastic. So thank you for giving us the platform to be able to talk about these things, because it's important about starting that conversation.
Well, thank you so much. This is one conversation to start many others. So let the conversations begin. Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Urgency of now.
If you're uncomfortable, like a lot of us are, it's time to talk.
In the luxury of cooling off, or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
It's time to talk.
Freedom and equality.
Let's talk mental health, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things they don't see. Let's talk about mental health. Let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's time to talk.
Urgency of now.